So I would usually take this outside, especially because the weather is really nice today. But I think we can use the silence here to get into a little bit of a follow along when it comes to mobility. And I think we're going to be working mostly on our hips, knees and ankles. But if there's a little bit more upper body mobility involved, then I guess that's a bonus, right? So I would say we start out in a deep squat position. Now, for many people, that's already going to be a little bit of a challenge, but if your heels raise up, that is totally okay. Don't worry about it. If not, you can actually sit down into a true deep squat position. And from here, we're even going to help a little bit with our arms. Just move sideways, and we're going to do a couple of switches from here. And I would recommend just working really slow in the beginning and keeping the range of motion small, and over time we're going to increase it by ourselves. So now, as you can see, working mostly from the hips, my legs are fully relaxed. I'm using my arms to straighten up my upper body, and I'll just switch from one side to the other. There is no problem in helping out a little bit, especially in the beginning when we're working out, when we're warming up and when we're not yet fully activated. So before we go into full rotation like so, I want you to just switch a couple of times with me from the left side to the right side and even lean back slightly, so we'll reduce the amount of hip mobility we'll require for the beginning. Now we're going to move forward with our upper body too, and into a slight rotation by using our hands even. And as you can see, I'm pushing away with my foot to have a little bit more leverage to go into full rotation, and then move them to the other side. And again, I'm pushing away with my foot. You can also use your hand to help out slightly here and go to another full rotation. Now I want to increase the lumbar spine mobility and the lumbar rotation with each repetition. So moving to the left, both knees on the ground. We're going to use our foot to push away. We're going to use our hands to pull ourselves more and more to a nice rotation in our lumbar spine. We're going to do this a second time each side. Then we're going to increase that range of motion a little bit more. You're going to see how there are many ways to add range of motion when it comes to, especially when it comes to rotation in your spine, and when it comes to spinal mobility in general. You do not actually need to work in lateral directions or like only to the front to an extension or flexion. We can add some other variations that are going to help us out a lot and that keep us mobile and limber for a really long time. So now we're going to go into full rotation in our lumbar spine and try and go closer to the ground. If you can bring your face all the way down, that would be amazing, but it's not necessary. Keep in mind, all those exercises are the goal itself. So if you cannot do any of those, the goal is to get there over time, not to be able to just do it the first time you see it. And here you will definitely notice that we have a little bit more pull in our obliques. So everything that connects our hips to our upper body is getting a nice little stretch in here. And don't forget to use your foot to push away from your quads here. So we have a nice little helper when it comes to getting more into the rotation in our lumbar spine. To the left side, right side, and now here, switch once, switch twice, and now we want to move forward. And you're gonna notice on this side here, we're gonna get more stretch in our glutes, especially in our minimus and medius, so the side of our butts, which you would call the ventrogluteal area, basically. And instead of moving backwards, we're moving forward. We want to open up the outside of our glutes and the outside of our upper legs. Move forward, you can bring your face down. You can push a little bit more into the direction of the outside leg. And we have, again, internal and external rotation in our hips separately at the same time. So one side is rotated internally, one side is rotated externally, and I would say this feels pretty good for my hips. The more I do this, the more I feel like a well-oiled machine instead of a decrepit old man, which is how I usually feel when I wake up in the morning, because I sleep like dog shit. That's neither here nor there. I'm just sharing life lessons, I guess, which I have to say, the way that I found out that I'm getting older, it's probably not the usual way people register that. So I grew up with 4 siblings and a father who grew up in the 60s, so you know, privacy was not really a thing in our household, which means that when it came the time to move out and I moved in with a couple of friends, I would always like lock my door, you know, before I went to sleep, even though no one would ever like come inside to check on me, which as one day I registered and I stopped locking my door because I thought that if I died in my sleep, no one would notice until they smelled my body after a week. And that is not a nice way to be discovered. So that is pretty much how I realized, okay, I'm starting to get old here. I'm thinking about dying in my sleep, which is probably not how you found out that you're getting older, if you are even. So now we're gonna switch it up a little bit. We're gonna come forward, and now you can actually use your arms for a little bit more support or compensation if you do not have the required core strength for the coming exercises, because we want to stay upright and we want to do this here. So we're still internally and externally rotating our upper body straight. We're going a little bit into a lumbar spine rotation here, and we're gonna stay upright and roll over our toes, so we include our ankles now a little bit more. Stay upright, push forward, and then switch to the other side. And you see, I roll over my toes, I extend my ankles, I push downward, rotate, and then switch to the other side. And I really have noticed that the more I slow down the movement, the better it feels, and the more I can actually use this as a kind of meditation, I could say, to get into a nicer headspace in the morning or whenever you feel like doing this. Some people do not enjoy working in the morning. It is totally fine, totally acceptable. I'm not a big fan of this whole grind set movement where you wake up at 6 in the morning to go train, or 4 in the morning, just so you can say that you have a routine. So the last time here, we're going to roll to this side. Now we're going to switch it up a little bit again, because we're going to add the forward fold in our hips more. So we have a nice little stretch here, and again in our gluteus minimus and medius, the side of our butt, which is on the outside here. So it's this leg, you're gonna feel it here. We move forward, bring our face down, move up again, and then we use our core strength to pull our body up and switch over to the other side. So you're noticing most of what we're doing is connected to some kind of rotation in all of the joints that we're using for the movement. And this is because mostly we move forward and backward, up and down. There's not a lot of rotation happening in our hips and knees, and I mean like real rotation, like this one in our daily lives. And you might not notice it when you're like 15 or 20, but I'm 30 now, and even though I do a lot of mobility work, I can very much notice that if I stop for a week or two, I am suffering a decrease in mobility, which in turn is a decrease in life quality, I would definitely say. We're gonna do a last repetition here. Slow it down, bring your face downward, and now from the outside here, I have a really nice stretch all the way through my quadriceps. And one last time, also to the other side, just so we stay symmetrical, even though I don't know on what side I started. I guess it's fine. So I'm gonna come back up here and we're gonna switch it up. Instead of rotational movement, we just want to use a little bit more core strength and more control. So bring your knees down. You're gonna have a little bit of a stretch in your toes too, which I'd say is a little bit unusual, but move back a little bit. Now use your hip flexors to move into a deep squat position. And I'm using my arms to compensate just a little bit again, and to give me a little bit more balance. You see what happens when I do not concentrate on what I'm doing. So slow it down, move back from here. You might feel it on the inside of your knees. If you have any sort of pain here, be sure that it doesn't get too much. What you can also do to decrease the amount of core strength you require for the exercise is just use your hands. It doesn't really matter nowadays I'm saying, it doesn't really matter now. We're not really working on strengthening precisely, but that is an additional bonus that we get the more often that we do those exercises. But there is no shame, no problem in just using your hands and helping out a little bit. You can even move back a little bit more, get a nice stretch in your tiptoes, and then go back into the deep squat position. Now we're getting a lot of movement here. Our tibialis is working overtime because it has to keep us upright. And I'm just gonna switch a couple of times, and I'm gonna use my arms to help out a little bit. If your knees leave the ground, also no problem. You can, I advise you even to just play around with it a little bit. Find out where your strengths lie, find out where your weaknesses lie, because that is how we get better when it comes to anything, not just mobility. You can even push outwards a little bit, which is gonna first contract the side of your glutes also, but it's gonna move the stretch also to the outside of your knees. And a couple of more repetitions, just so we use as much mobility and stretch as we can. Move backwards. Again, you can up your knees from the ground a little bit, even though that wasn't really an English sentence. We're gonna do a final repetition here. Hold the deep squat, move forward. We're gonna try and not use any compensation with our hands. We're gonna push our knees outwards. We're gonna move back here. And now we're gonna relax our feet a little bit, because you're very likely gonna feel it here in your tibia, in your tibialis. So just move backwards and lengthen your back, lengthen your shoulders, pull your hands forward. And what I like to do is go onto my fingertips, because from here I can push down my chest and pull together my shoulder blades to open up my chest and lengthen my latissimus a little bit. So if you know, the latissimus wraps around the entirety of the back. Relax again, hold your legs in. We're not actually going to move yet into a hip mobility exercise. We're just going to stay here and then move back again, because we just want to relax our hips, our feet and ankles just a little bit. And the reason I am adding some upper body mobility is because I am an idiot and I do not know how to just relax for a second and enjoy the fact that I'm just, just sitting down. So there has to be benefit from what I'm doing. And I know it's obsessive, but what are we gonna do, right? So one last time, move back. If you want to, you can extend your shoulder blades, pull them together at the very back, adduct, abduct, extend your lats, and now on here, we're gonna have our hands all the way, arms extended, and we want to actively push our hips down, meaning our lower back and our glutes are starting to contract, to push downward, and extend your shoulders all the way. We're only going to do this once or twice. So move back, relax, and move forward and push down one last time. So now that we've done some preliminary work, we're going to use one of my favorite exercises you've probably seen a lot of times on this channel if you've been following for any amount of time actually and seen any kind of mobility video that I do for the lower body. We're going to use the Cossack squat, and some people might know it as the side squat. Some people know it as the Cossack squat, COSS. But we are gonna start with a very small range of motion, because I want you to really feel what you're doing in your musculature and in your tendons. So basically, the place where you feel stretch first is usually the place needs the most work, right? So some people might already feel it on the insides of their legs, and that is probably where you need to put the focus on. If you start feeling it here in your gastrocnemius or soleus, then that's usually where you should put your focus on. And from here now, we want to sit down all the way, and I realize my pants are obstructing my mobility, which is not a problem, but keep in mind there are two separate things that we want to focus on. For one, we want to keep our foot flat on the ground, because, and I'm going to show you what happens if we turn it up. So basically, as long as my feet are parallel, I'm sitting down all the way, the stretch is more on the inside of our upper leg. But now you're going to notice that once we switch it up, we turn our foot upward, the stretch suddenly moves from the inside more to the biceps femoris, so basically the back side of our leg. And once you pull in your toes, you're going to have your Achilles tendon, your gastro, and your soleus, basically your calves, also included. So we're going to switch it up a little bit. We're going to stay parallel and flat, push down, and parallel and flat, push down. And again, we're using the hands for compensation. If you want to add a little bit more of a strength in here, you can just raise your hands, and now one last time the other side, because we're going to switch it up from the inside of our legs to the back side. And here, start with small range of motion. Raise your heel a little bit, keep your knee up from the ground. We're going to do 1 or 2 repetitions like so. Actively pull your toes in to include your lower legs. One final time here, and now we're going to increase the range of motion significantly, I would say, because just from here to down there and putting your leg on the ground fully, just those couple of centimeters or inches, they do make a big difference. So like so, slow it down, bring your knee down, put your leg down, pull in your toes actively. We're going to do this a couple of times. And again, either you want to keep your hands on the ground for compensation, so you do not have too much of a strength inclusion and you can focus more on the mobility part, or you can use your strength to switch it up so you have a combination workout between strength exercises and mobility exercises. I'm just holding for a couple of seconds before I switch it up again. So one more time to this side, and one more time to this side. And I'm actively pulling in, and we're going to add another movement from the same position. So we switch, and now again I want to add some lumbar rotation and some oblique and lat stretch. So extend one arm and just turn over to one side. I'm going to repeat this again. Up, sit down on the other side, extend one arm, and use your hand like so. Pull yourself slightly into more of a rotation. Again, I told you, anything we're working on now for our upper body, I would consider a bonus, because our main focus are the joints of our lower body. And you might have noticed with this repetition, if you're watching closely, that I'm starting to move my hip up, so I have more of a pull in my quadriceps and in my hip flexors. So you can even use a wall. I've been working for the last 10 minutes and my camera just stopped, which means that I will have to repeat what I just did, but it's not a problem. So if you have noticed, now that we are here, I am pushing my hip upward to increase the amount of stretch I have in my quads and my flexors. And I'm going to do this just a couple of times from the left side to hop. Just move to the middle a little bit more, to the left side. First, bring your knee down, your hand back, and then push up or leave your knee on the ground. And as I said, you can use the wall to pull yourself a little bit more into a stretch. And we're going to switch this up to the other side. Repeat this whole process. Slow it down. Hold it for a second or two. We are still pretty much moving dynamically, yes, but we want to hold the very top of the movement for just a second or two. And repeat this again on either side. Just one more time. Hold, push as much as you can towards the, whatever this is called, ceiling. And you're going to feel the whole way from your knees all the way up to your arms. Nice little stretch here. Repeat on the other side. One more time, like so. And that is basically it when it comes to the mobility work itself, but we will end this with a nice little test that I always use, and I would advise you, like, try this out before you do the mobility routine, just so you can see if there is an immediate effect. And I can promise you, you will definitely notice, even though we just did 20 minutes, that those 20 minutes did have a very immediate effect in our mobility. So hands on our heels, butt on the floor, just so we know how far apart our feet should be. And we're gonna push upwards. And now here's the thing. If you feel a stretch in your quads or your hamstrings, chances are they need a little bit more work, because this is only level 1 of the movement. It's a minimal stretch, that's okay. It's a real tight stretch. If you can't push forward, then you need a little bit more work. If you do not, however, we're gonna move down to level number 2 in our elbows. And what's really important is that you do not sit down, because this is gonna decrease the amount of mobility and stretching. We want to push upwards by flexing our glutes and our lower back all the way up. And if you feel a strong stretch here, then that is the level we need to work on. And if not, then we can move down to the final level, all the way laying down. And you want again to push actively upward. You can even use your arms like so to increase the arch in your back. And now here I am starting to feel my hip flexors stretching quite strongly. If you do not, then you are definitely more limber than I am. And congratulations. But try this out. And I hope you enjoyed following me as much as I enjoyed just rambling on for half an hour. So thank you for listening, and I'll see y'all tomorrow anyway, because you know, new videos every day. Yes, Captain Cairo. Peace out.